So we are asking you to mute yourselves, attendees, as you come in. We'll get some better sound quality that way for the candidates. You can leave your visual up if you wish, or, whoops. And I think what you're going to see primarily is the candidate who is speaking, but it's up to you whether you want to scan through the views of other people here.
Yeah, we're just still admitting people. Take us a couple more minutes and then we'll really start. We're up to 90 people, more coming. Ben?
Yes.
I will start talking.
Sure, I'll keep
As the
admitting people.
co-host, keep admitting people. And then in a minute, I'm going to turn it over to you and then I'll admit
Okay.
people. Okay. Hello,
Okay.
everybody. We don't want to keep people waiting. So we are starting our forum, our first of 2 candidate forums for the town of Peterborough. Tonight is select board and town clerk, and next week on Tuesday will be the planning board, zoning board, and recreation committee. Both of these will be ably moderated by Liz Tentarelli. If you want to just quickly raise your hand, Liz. And some of you may have seen her before because she's moderated other Peterborough candidate forums for us. 2 years ago, around this time, we were all packed into Bass Hall, live and in person, for a very informative, energetic evening. This race 2 years later is also one of great interest to the town. And so we were delighted to be able to use Zoom technology to present a candidate forum so that everybody who's running for office for a contested seat has a chance to talk, make their profiles in the newspaper come to life on the Zoom screen. And for the people in town to ask questions. We got a lot of questions submitted and Liz has boiled them down and we'll ask them tonight. So I'm from the League of Women Voters. It's 100 years that League of Women Voters has been doing things like this. Nonpartisan, educational, political advocacy and education. So it's a proud tradition and we're very glad to carry it on. And in the town of Peterborough, we wouldn't even dream of trying to do it without our fantastic local newspaper. So the Monadnock Ledger Transcript and the League are co-sponsors of this event. So I'm going to turn it over to Ben for a minute. Ben and Heather, if Heather wants to speak as well.
Oh yeah, hi everybody. Yeah, I'm Ben Conant, editor of the Ledger Transcript in Peterborough. And yeah, thanks to the League for co-hosting this with us. And thanks to the candidates for running for office. And thanks to all of you for coming out or not coming out and getting informed tonight. And, you know, if this is your first time learning about any of these candidates, then you probably should subscribe to the newspaper. Because we've been running a bunch of stuff about it, candidate profiles and stories over the past couple of weeks. So go pick that up or call us or subscribe online and you can see all that stuff and going forward as well. Yeah, so I don't know. I think we can get started if Liz is ready to go.
Well, let's get started. And we are recording this forum. We need to tell you that for legal reasons. It will be converted to a YouTube video and will be available on the League of Women Voters webpage so that you can tell your friends who might have missed it if they want to watch it. That website is LWVNH.org, and you'll see a page there for candidate forums. So here we go. Let's start. And we're going to talk with the select board candidates first. I will tell you that on your ballot, you will see 4 names. However, Judy Furstenberg has withdrawn from the race, but the ballots have all been printed, so it's on there. but the remaining 3 candidates are with us tonight. They're each going to get a minute to tell you a little bit about themselves and why they're running for office. And then we will move on from there. Now, I'm hoping what comes up in a minute will be the first speaker, which is Richard Clark. Mr. Clark.
Hi, I'm Richard Clark. I'm running for Select Board. I've been on the Budget Committee and the Planning Board for many years. I have lived in Peterborough since high school. I've raised my family here. They're raising theirs. I've run a local business in town for the last 30 years. If you choose me for the Select Board, I'll do my best to uphold the values of our small town. One of my goals is to reduce the debt service so we can maximize our tax dollars. I have a couple ideas of how to accomplish this. Maybe some of you have some too. I would love to hear them. One of mine is the fire station is in need of replacement. I would suggest we place a warrant article for the next 3 years to build up a down payment. This would decrease the amount of borrowing when we finally decide to replace it. Second, I think the town should explore a 2-year budget. This would save the staff time, effort, and could be used elsewhere to plan better and save the town money. Another goal of mine is to find more consensus among the voters through being more inclusive to different ideas. In democracy, everyone should feel they have a voice and that they have a recourse when things don't go their way.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clark. Your time is up.
Yeah.
Just for the benefit of all the viewers, Marcia King is going to be holding up red signs when time is up, and we'll allow candidates to finish their sentence. And
I
then
can't
move
find
on.
her.
She's not visible.
She is visible on my strip. Okay, you know what? I'm going to hold up something
Okay,
as well.
thank you.
All right.
Sorry.
So we'll work on that. And the next candidate we're going to hear from is Karen Hatcher.
May I interrupt for 1 second? I just got a text from somebody that said they weren't allowed in because we had reached 100 participants. And
Oh,
I thought my Zoom allowed a larger number than that. So I don't, if you are texting with people who can't get in, I'm going to apologize in advance for that and remind everybody there will be a YouTube video of this. So I don't know. I thought because I had the premium account that I could take more than 100, but I guess not. So if you're texting with people, just tell them it's, that's what it is for tonight. We'll see if we can reconcile it by the next one. Apologies. Thanks, Liz.
thank you, Kate. All right, Karen Hatcher running for Select Board. You may begin. Nope. I need my red signs.
Thank you. I couldn't unmute. Appreciate that. Good evening. I'm Karen Hatcher. I believe that Peterborough is on the verge of another renaissance. Despite the challenges of the last year, we have emerged resilient and strong. Throughout the year, we cared for one another, supported our frontline workers, and shored up our business community. Town leadership ensured that long-awaited infrastructure projects started on time. And later this year, we'll celebrate our new library and the reopening of the Main Street Bridge in our downtown. But the pandemic also made clear that we must recognize the inequities among us and begin to address critical gaps in our human infrastructure. Many new voices have emerged in our community, and I'm excited to help them join with those who steward our rich cultural heritage to envision our future together. Together, we can ensure that everyone has what they need to succeed and thrive. Together, we can ensure the continuation of traditions that we hold dear, and together we can build a vibrant, equitable, and resilient future for this very special community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hatcher. And so I can see Marcia King holding up those signs, and so I will hold it up because apparently you can see me. Thank you. Mr. William Kennedy running for Select Board. Your turn, please.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Kennedy, Ethan's dad. If you don't know Ethan, you might recognize me as the guy handing out fresh donut holes on Pine Street during Halloween trick-or-treat. First, let's thank the League of Women Voters and the Monadnock Ledger for holding this forum. Thank you very much. A special shout out to Liz and Kate and Heather and Ben. Jean and I have been in town for nearly 37 years now. We love it here. Our children were born and raised here, and I helped build and run a multi-million-dollar business here in Peterborough. Most recently, I've been an educator teaching science and technology to high schoolers. So I'm pretty experienced with difficult challenges and challenging people. I currently serve on 5 different volunteer committees around town. I know and have worked with many of town staff and with the many amazing volunteers that keep this town humming. So I have a good idea of what it takes to run our town. So thank you all for joining in. I will do my best to answer your questions and concerns.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Now, we received a number of questions about housing, and I'm going to hold those for just a moment. But I'd like to ask a broader question, and you can choose how to answer it. Each of you, how do you feel, what do you feel are the top 2 priorities that need to be addressed on behalf of Peterborough other than housing? We'll get to that in a moment. And what are your plans for tackling those issues? And Ms. Hatcher, would you go first on that, please?
I will, thank you, Liz. I think the first priority needs to be investing in our people. We've just come through a year of pandemic. We have seen families struggle. We have seen people lose their jobs. We've seen the lack of resources, the lack of affordable housing, which we'll talk about later, but things like daycare, things like mental health services, the kinds of things that really help people feel like they belong in a community and they're cared for in a community. We've done a great job investing in physical infrastructure in our town. We've got a new bridge coming, we've got the library, but I think the time has come for us to invest in the care of our people and to invest in the future of Peterborough and young families and young people moving here. So all of the things that we need to look at with the relief money that's coming and how we might apply that, I think that's priority 1. Secondly, obviously, education and taxes are top of mind for people. And I think really helping folks understand the connection between how education is funded in the state and how those costs are downshifted and the impact that they have on our taxes is really going to be important. And also how this renaissance that we're on the verge of and the growth that we're seeing is actually going to build our tax base and how that allows people to actually pay less and stay in their homes. So there's a lot of education around that and important conversations we need to have in the community around where we're going and what the future looks like.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Hatcher. Mr. Kennedy, what do you see as the top priorities and what are your plans for tackling those issues?
Well, for me, and I think for the town, the top priorities are 2. First of all, our tax base continues to rise. And I think we need to get our handle on that. We're emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic. Our businesses are beginning to open up. I think we have a very bright future ahead of us, but we want to make sure that the town remains the small town feel, as they say in the master plan. So that we want to make it an inviting environment, but we also want to keep our town alive. So that's the first priority, is that we allocate funds for infrastructure and we allocate funds for renovating after the Main Street Bridge project. We make sure that our town is inviting, particularly to visitors to town. The second is workforce. I think we have a real problem with workforce in twofold. One is, and it's very intrinsically you can't extricate it from our affordable housing issue. But from a workforce standpoint, there are a number of things going on, particularly through the EDA and in collaboration, for instance, with Franklin Pierce College, to bring some young workforce into town while providing housing and so on. So, from that standpoint, workforce and taxes are the 2 main issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Richard Clark, what do you see as the top priorities and how would you tackle them, sir? You'll have to unmute yourself, Mr. Clark. We can't hear you, Mr. Clark. There we go. Nope, you double clicked. Try it again. You're still muted, sir.
Now,
Now it works. Thank you.
the future of our town is basically the young people. We have to make it attractive for them to come here and live. The cost of housing, which we're not going to discuss later, but that's one thing. But just most people think Peterborough is too exclusive, the cost. And so we have to provide some services to allow younger families to come here, because if we all grow old, there won't be anyone here. So we need to have the families come because they'll make us younger. So that's a top priority. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's tackle one of those housing questions. And there are going to be 3 of them. So the first one is, what is the first thing you will do towards enabling increased housing density in areas close to downtown that already have water and sewer, in spite of some strong opposition? And perhaps you don't want to do that, but that was the question that we received. And we're going to start with Mr. Kennedy on that one.
Well, first off, I would question the role of the select board in planning issues. This is really kind of something that should be addressed through the procedures of planning procedures. You know, I certainly will participate in that, and I certainly have some very strong ideas about how we might strengthen our housing market. But really, that's a process that I would defer to our planning board.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Clark, what do you see? What would be some of the first things you would do about the housing density in the areas in town, close with the water and sewer?
Well, the town is quite crowded downtown, and it's naturally that way, and people enjoy it. I mean, it's the way the town and village was developed. So I'm for more density downtown. It supplies housing that's cheaper per square foot. We already have the infrastructure, and I really hate to break up our green belts. I mean, 3-acre lots for houses is it's ridiculous. I mean, you're just wasting that land. They should be concentrated where we've already developed. That's my point of view.
Thank you. And Ms. Hatcher, your view of downtown, increasing density downtown?
Yeah, I would both agree that the role of the select board is probably less direct in terms of actually affecting the zoning for that particular question. But while I was on the select board, I initiated the Community Task Force on Housing and ran that for 18 months. And we had some very robust conversations in the community and learning about the issues in our town. And I think more of that kind of engagement and really hearing from the people in town who actually live in those areas would be critical to our whatever we planned and whatever we were able to do next, because either we're going to bring folks along together in whatever the housing looks like, or we're going to continue to battle each other around this. And I think that's not effective. So that's my experience around that.
Thank you, Ms. Hatcher. And our second question is perhaps more germane to the select board, because it said, every day there is someone asking in our Facebook groups about where to find housing in the area, ranging from apartments to houses. Oftentimes, these are people who are moving from elsewhere, out of town or out of state, and wanting to come to your beautiful town. So what will you do to ensure that housing is prioritized or at least available for the currently unhoused in the Peterborough area, the people who are already there, and balance that with those who are looking to move in? So that's a tricky question. Mr. Clark, you're up
Yes.
first.
That is a very tricky question. Basically, it's economics. I mean, if the property values, if we continue with the zoning the way it is, with the lots being 3 acres and big and building outside our town, and those lots are very, very expensive to develop, nobody will ever be able to move here, period. If you decrease the cost of the land by moving people into places we already have, we already have the infrastructure, it doesn't raise the tax base. So the town has to decide as a whole. I mean, as a select board, we can only guide. We are basically listening to the town people and we follow them. And so they have to decide what they want in this town. It's up to the voters, really. Thank you.
And would you prioritize people already in the area looking to, perhaps working here, looking to live there, or people from out of state or out of the area coming in? Or is that not relevant?
Well, I don't exclude anybody.
Okay.
Everybody's welcome.
All right, thank you. So going on to Karen Hatcher again, you know, is there a way to prioritize those who are already working in your community, looking for housing there, and also serve those looking to come in from outside, bringing new skills?
Yeah, I've been pretty impressed with the online community and the way that it helps people to find housing is pretty remarkable. I would say that I don't, you know, as that goes, we do help each other and we help our own. And I think people have been very generous with people even trying to come in from outside of the area to find housing. You know, the fact is I'm from outside of the area, and a lot of us, probably more than half of us, are from somewhere else now. So that's the shape of our community, you know, so I don't know how you control that. But what I would say is this: because we are not a home rule state, and we really do rely on the state to create the laws that we can then enforce and act upon, we really do need the state to incentivize workforce housing. And there's some federal money coming that will should be applied to affordable housing if all things go the way we hope. And what I would hope would happen would be that at the state level, there would be incentive programs created so that people who want to use their property and invest and create, and I know that there are people in our community, because I've spoken with them, who have property and want to do affordable housing on their land. If we can find ways to incentivize that, then we will be able to create the kind of housing we need in the places where we have the services available. So there are several conversations going on right now about that in the community. And I would hope that with some additional funding and incentive, we would be able to support those folks who want to use their property in that way.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hatcher. And Mr. Kennedy, what about you? Your thoughts on this, accommodating both those in the area and those wanting to come in?
Well, I don't know that we can be selective in a forceful way, but we can, based upon how we advertise ourselves as a community, we can discourage people from moving in. I don't think that's a good solution in all. I do know of several efforts to address affordable housing in the community. I do know of several failed efforts to do so. I'm involved with the Economic Development Authority in developing a particular local housing initiative that I think has some real possibilities. And I amplify Karen by saying that there will be and are monies coming available through the state as well through the feds to incentivize as well as to create affordable housing tracts. So I will work in that direction and work with our EDA to do that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. And another question about housing that came in, and this is probably a fairly short answer. Given that Peterborough has been for almost 2 decades trying to solve the affordable or workforce housing shortage in the area in Peterborough, with no solution in sight, is what the questioner said, do you believe it's time to hire an outside professional to coordinate and consult with other towns in New Hampshire that have been able to successfully address this problem so that we might be able to do the same? And why or why not? And Ms. Hatcher, you're up first on that one.
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. We are currently, the town of Peterborough is currently part of a larger effort, a regional effort, to look at how we promote the region and how we attract workforce and how we deal with housing issues. So I'm involved in that, and I believe that we must take a regional approach. So in our experience with the Housing Task Force, we were speaking with many other representatives of communities who were having varying degrees of success. And there are some examples, but many communities are struggling in New Hampshire with this question. So I think the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority has been a great resource. I think we have gotten a lot of support there. And I think there are a lot of resources we can bring to bear without hiring a consultant, so to speak, but rather using some of the resources that we know are available to us.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kennedy, would you want to hire a consultant or not at this point, and why?
I think it may be premature to do so. I do know a number of inter-town collaborations that are going on to try to solve this problem. We've spent about 2/3 of our time so far talking about housing. I want to point out that housing certainly is a community development process. That's why we have a community development person to focus their attention in that regard. You know, I think that the select board should be very aware of what's going on and support those efforts and make it a priority, but it's not the only thing that the select board is going to be doing. I realize that's kind of sidetrack on that answer, but there we are.
All right, thank you. Mr. Clark, what about you? Do you think it's time to hire a consultant?
No, I don't think so. It has nothing to do with a consultant. It's economics. If you don't have affordable housing, there is no workforce. I mean, I run a small company, and none of my employees live in town, not even my son, and I pay him quite well. So it's kind of strange that it's all about economics. So they live out of town in other towns because the rents are cheaper. So hiring a consultant to tell us that wouldn't serve any purpose. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We received a number of individual questions for you 3 candidates. And I looked at them and I've chosen one for each of the candidates. And I think that's a fair way to do it. And let's see, Mr. Kennedy, if my notes are right here, Mr. Kennedy is up next to speak first. And Mr. Kennedy, the question that was addressed to you is, you've spoken about the effect of the state downshifting costs to the towns. What can Peterborough do to keep its taxes low in view of that constant downshifting and still keep the safe and vibrant community we have today?
That's a tough one.
Yes, it is.
Let's talk about taxes to start with. You do know that you know, I'm a taxpayer myself, so I'm very well aware of what's going on in town. And if you look at the charts, our tax rates are in the top 15 towns in New Hampshire. but we also maintain a very high level of, town services. I mean, our rec department alone is the envy of the area. I don't think Keene even has as nice a rec opportunities as we do. But you got to know the limitations. There are only some 32% of our property taxes are under the purview of the budget committee and the select board. It's just 32%. The rest of it is county taxes and school taxes, both local and state. So the state is relentlessly downshifting their costs onto us. We have to pick it up with property taxes. The one way that we've been pretty effective in keeping our tax rate down is by taking full advantage of the tax incremental financing districting, which I've been very much involved in recently. And that helps to keep our taxes down. Otherwise, there's not a lot of wiggle room. We have to keep our costs down if we can, perhaps increase our revenues through, for instance, our ambulance service, and a few other ways we can do that, but there's not a lot of wiggle room.
All right, thank you. I think you're right. Every town feels that there's not a lot of wiggle room. That's a wonderful phrase. Mr. Clark, what do you see? Sorry, different question, all right, from Mr. Clark. You currently serve on the planning board, and you have I think you have 1 year still to go on that term. If you are elected to the select board, would you continue to serve on that committee or another committee? And how would your experience on that board influence your decisions on the select board, Mr. Clark?
Well, as you know, if I was a selectman, there's already a representative of the select board on the planning board, so I would step down and either I would be on it as a select board member or someone else, one of the other two, because there's a representative already. And the planning board gives you a lot of interesting things because we have to come to a compromise almost every time someone comes in, what someone wants to do with their property and what the neighbors don't want them to do with their property. And so it's a fine line to try to balance and compromise. And pretty much that's basically all government is a balance and compromise. I mean, you have to be able to see all points of view, and you might not make everyone happy. You probably won't. If you've done it right, you've made everyone unhappy, but they can live with it. And so the planning board is a very interesting place, and I suggest anybody out there should go on it and try it for a while. Thank you.
That's great advice, and I think we have 8 people running for it that we'll be talking to this Tuesday. So it must be an exciting board to be on. Ms. Hatcher, a question that I received for you. When you stepped down from the select board last year, you said that the restrictions placed on the select board through right to know laws made your ability to inform, advise, and act on behalf of the board in your staff position untenable. Mm-hmm. Well, the right to know laws have not changed, and apparently you intend to continue on the community and economic development coordinator position. Mm-hmm. So how can you do that, be effective if you're elected? And would you address that possible conflict of interest, please?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I meant what I said when I said it, for sure. And when I began the position last year, it was a new position and it was really unformed. Is the truth. We didn't exactly have the parameters of the position defined. And I think it became more complex than we anticipated at the beginning. However, I've been in the job for a year, and it is a 30-hour week or less position, which is allowable by law. And in that year, I have been able to really understand how I do in fact work with the select board or not. And what I've found is that there's very little direct contact that I have with the board because I do report to the town administrator. And all of my reporting and the things that I'm working on are channeled through her. So in fact, when it was pretty messy in the beginning, and I think we all were struggling, and I certainly was, it was a pretty intense time when we were trying to figure out how to do this. We've worked it out. So I feel like the lines are very clear. I understand where they are, and I understand how the jobs are separate, and I understand how we would keep them separate. As to a conflict of interest, I've really thought about that because people have raised it, but I would say, you know, typically a conflict of interest assumes that a party is gaining a benefit by virtue of some unfair advantage. In reality, these two positions are pretty complementary because everything that I'm learning on the ground and real time in the community, I will be able to bring to the board in our discussions. And I think that we would expect would happen with any of our elected officials. You would want what Rich knows about building to be part of the planning board. So I think all of that is important, and I think I can manage it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hatcher.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask one more question before we take the closing statements. And that has to do with Article 13 on this year's warrant. That is a commitment to the goal of 100% renewable energy in Peterborough. And if elected to the select board, how would you support that goal? And Mr. Clark, you're up first. And assuming it passes.
Yes. I think our town is moving towards that way anyways. It's just the nature of the beast. I mean, we've got the solar field. We've gone over to pellet stoves. It's going to happen. I'm even looking at in my industry is electric trucks, hybrid trucks. I mean, 2 years ago, I would have said no. There's nothing going to be happening there. It's just dead in the water. But as the economics help us, everything will go that way. And there's a real political push, and people want this. And so this is where we're going to go no matter what. So I'm all on board. So that's about all I got to say to that.
Do you see a particular role for the select board in this?
Just picking like the new equipment will be probably hybrids, you know, and getting the town heads to go that way. It won't be hard. I'm pretty sure we're over the hump. We're going downhill now. I think everyone's going to be green very soon.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Ms. Hatcher, what are your views of that? What do you think the role of the select board would be?
Well, I believe that the role of the select board, once this is passed, will be to establish a committee that will actually oversee the implementation. And that committee, as I've spoken with the folks who are championing this, they've explained to me that the committee would be taking a central role in public education and in helping homeowners to actually make the transition to renewables, because as a town, we have done a really good job with our own buildings, but the real work is going to happen in the community. And so, you know, establishing that committee, having that committee reporting in and supporting them to actually do the education with the community, I believe is the role of the select board.
Thank you, Ms. Hatcher. Mr. Kennedy, what do you see as the select board's role in achieving that goal?
Well, a very supportive role. I want to point out my relationship with the Peterborough Energy Committee, who's very actively involved in bringing green to Peterborough. For instance, I was very active in getting electric vehicle charge stations into the Riverwalk Parkway. That should be happening this summer. And that's not only a great application of green energy, but it's also bringing new customers to our retail businesses and restaurants in downtown Peterborough. So it's a great marketing tool. In my work with the Peterborough Energy Committee, they have a number of different efforts for not only vehicles, but green spaces, the whole gamut of things. So as a select person, I would work closely with them as well as whatever committee that might be needed to guide the development of green spaces in town.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Mm.
So I did tell the candidates that you would each have 1 minute to bring up any issues we didn't address in these questions. And if you want to share information about how the voters can contact you about further questions, feel free to do that. And Ms. Hatcher is going to go first on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks to the League and to the Ledger Transcript for organizing this forum, and thanks to the other candidates for running and for this robust session. When Mark and I moved here, we were warmly welcomed by this community, and I have strived to repay that welcome in all the ways I can think of. During my 2 years on the select board and in my professional life, I have worked honestly, energetically, transparently, and generously to make things better for our community. Some would say the choice before the voters is one of trust. I agree. Do you trust me to listen and understand your concerns? Do you trust me to consider what people in our community need first? Do you trust me to bring my whole self to the service of this community? If the answer is yes, please vote for me on May 11th. Let's continue to work together to build a future where we are all proud to call Peterborough home. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hatcher, for your answers tonight. Mr. Kennedy, 1 minute, please.
As your selectman, I will work to ensure that Peterborough remains an important social, cultural, and economic center of the Monadnock region. Working with our dedicated town officials and volunteers, I promise to keep us healthy and safe, promote sustainability in our government and our community, maintain and improve our infrastructure while preserving our open spaces, support and help our local businesses and merchants thrive, and preserve our beauty and character as what's stated in the master plan, a small town feel with a big town opportunities. Now, thank you all for listening. Please vote for me, Bill Kennedy, for Select Board. If you want to contact me further, my Facebook page is bill.kennedy.71. My email address is kennedymri@gmail.com. And you may also give me a phone call, 924-6720.
Very thorough. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Clark, your closing statement, please.
Yes, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Transcript and the Monadnock Ledger together, however they're together now, and my other candidates. They are quite polished people. I mean, they're more political than I am. The only thing the committees that they suggest I'm more of a doing person, not a committee person. I do the job, and that's what I'll bring to the job. I will do the job. When I was younger, I used to argue. Now that I'm older, I discuss. There's no better way of convincing someone that your point of view is but to understand their point of view and coming up with a solution that is agreeable to both. So thank you for your consideration for me for Select Board. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. And I will remind our voters that there were candidate profiles in the Monadnock Ledger Transcript. So you can go back and get more information about the candidates from there. And in just a moment, we'll move on to the candidates for Town Clerk. I do want to remind you that voting is on Tuesday, May 11th from 7 to 7 at the Community Center on Elm Street. So at this point, I'm asking the candidates for the town clerks to unmute themselves, and we'll get started. And I'm hoping I can see someone in a moment. So we're going to start with Brendan Bowl for the first question for the opening statement. Mr. Bowl, are you unmuted and ready to speak?
I am. Thank you so much, Liz.
Okay.
My name is Brendan Bowl. I moved here 5 years ago back to New Hampshire from Michigan, to Peterborough specifically because my wife and I decided it was not just a good town, it was a great town to live. We've had 2 kids graduate from high school. We have one that is entering high school. Between the pandemic, I'm finding myself more having time on my hands with my client load and not being able to visit nursing homes as I used to in my business. I am ready to step up to serve. I served on the rec committee last year. I was elected in, and I had to step down because my daughter had COVID and I had to dedicate time to that. And we luckily had an alternate that could step up and take my spot. With that all taken care of, I feel my skills, which I can explain, I know there's going to be questions, will more than help me in being an exceptional town clerk. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bowl. Mr. Eddie Gomez, tell us a little about yourself, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Thanks to the transcript and for the League of Women Voters to put this on. My name is Eddie Gomez II, and I am running for town clerk because I love this town. I'm super passionate about community engagement. I'm a local dancer, actor. I'm a co-chair of the Master Planning Steering Committee, and I'm part of the Recycling Committee. I'm a member at Max Makerspace. I have my own small business in this town. I think that, government transactions and getting a vital record in time of despair or urgency, or trying to register on election day, should be as welcoming as possible. And I want to empower people to be as civically engaged as they can. And yeah, I have a passion for customer service, and I just love interacting with people. And that is why I am running for town clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. And I hope I'm going to pronounce your name correctly, Linda Guyette. Is that correct?
Okay. Yes, it's Guyette.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda Guyette. I have been privileged to serve as the Peterborough Town Clerk for the past 12 years. Prior to that, I was Deputy Town Clerk under Robert Lambert for 4 years. So I have a total of 16 years of extensive experience doing this. I've also served as one of the 2 regional co-chairs of the New Hampshire City and Town Clerks Association from 2012 to 2019. Most importantly, I'm state certified, which means that I'm able to serve your needs in every capacity without any hesitation. And I thank you for joining us tonight and welcome your questions.
All right, thank you. So my first question for all of you is about the job of town clerk. People interact with the town clerk for a number of matters, from dog licenses to voter registration. What will you do to make the process easier, faster, more efficient, or more accessible to Peterborough residents? And Mr. Gomez, you're up first on this.
Unmute one. There we go.
There we go.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Of course, yes. People interact with you for a number of matters. What will you do to make the process easier, faster, more efficient, more accessible to Peterborough residents?
Definitely. I think, figuring out like what documents you need and, registration times and things like that. I want to use my video. So I own a small video production business, and I want to use that skill asset to disseminate public information, to make resource videos, how-tos on like, hey, you need this to register to vote, or, this is how you license your dog. I also especially think it's important to, reach out to Conval and other youth programs of people who are turning 18 to know what to do, how to register to vote and things like that. I've worked in the restaurant industry for 3 years, and have interacted with people from San Antonio, Boston, and two very drastically different cultural places. So I'm very familiar with engaging with a wide range of people, and I love helping people solve problems. And so I want to bring that welcoming, inviting spirit to people who are doing those government transactions or getting those vital records. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Guyette, you've been doing this job, but what do you see as some things that you could do to make things work more smoothly or be easier in the office?
Every transaction that takes place here is a little bit different than the next one or the one before it. We've tried to streamline as much as we can while still adhering to state regulations and laws. We have gone to e-registrations, licensing your dogs via online, just to try and make things easier for everyone. And because of COVID last year, we went to doing a lot of things by mail, online, use of the drop box out front. But you're sort of limited because there are a lot of things that you have to do in person.
Would you continue doing things by mail that you
Yes.
started doing during COVID?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bowl, what do you see as things that could be done to make the process easier, faster, more efficient, or even more accessible?
First off, I would ask the select board to allow me to hire a deputy town clerk and get them fully trained instead of partially trained, so that they can assist me in all duties, not just some. I would then also utilize the Dropbox as well as much more than it has been recently, as well as I would like to institute a system I saw back in Michigan where many people will show up not with everything they need at the time that they need to do it. When they do that, I would like to give them a pass so that when they come back the next day, as soon as they show up, the first one help. So that would make it a happier, easier transaction for them, as well as working with Interweave, ElectionNet, NHVRIN, and MAP to streamline and better use their computer systems to make it easier for the use.
Okay, thank you for those answers. Of course, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that has supported voting rights for over 100 years. My next question focuses on getting voters registered. And what would you do any outreach to potential voters to help them register to vote? And if so, what might you do to help the currently underserved communities in your town? Ms. Guyette?
Well, we currently work with the League of Women Voters, and I know I've worked with Marcia King in the past especially at Conval with the kids, trying to get them on board and ready to register to vote when they're of age. When people come into the office, what we try to do is when new residents come in, we try to get them to register to vote at that time if they're ready to do so. Not everyone wants to register right away. Some people don't register at all. And we can't make them.
That's too bad. Okay.
But, I mean, we're doing what we can do. We work with the supervisors of the checklist. We register people here in the office, and we also, the supervisors have their sessions so that we can register people before voting at the polls. And people are always welcome to register at the polls.
Do you do any outreach? You talked about the high school. Do you do any outreach with the assisted living communities and so on?
They contact me, yes.
They
Yes.
do. All right,
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Bowl, what do you see as a way to do some outreach to reach people not already voting, registered to vote, who may have difficulty getting to the office? Do you have some ideas on that, Mr. Bowl?
Yes, just like my personal business, which has down thanks to the pandemic, I would like to reach out, one, to the nursing homes. I used to visit them to adjust their eyewear and to take care of any eyeglass needs they have, is to drop off registration certificates for them to fill out to bring back to the supervisors of the checklist, since they are the ones per RSA that are in charge of registering people. The town clerk is merely the facilitator of the information. I would also endeavor to make more public posts, especially with elections like now. This is our town meeting. This is our election that determines our taxes, that determines our warrant articles, and affects our fire department, police department. We need more people to be active instead of having 80% of the people show up during a presidential election, but really only 25% show up of our registered voters for a town meeting. That's a very poor turnout, and we need to get a lot more showing up. So between reaching out to the nursing homes, to the kids, making more public posts about how important these town meetings are, and utilizing social media for that.
All right, thank you for those ideas. Mr. Gomez, what would you do as outreach to potential voters to help them get registered, especially underserved communities?
Let me definitely. So I think that so accessibility is definitely a major aspect that I want to focus on. You know, whether it be internet connectivity issues, physical touch points, digital touch points, physical accessibility. I definitely would want to make information as easily as possible to our residents. So like definitely, I think it's appropriate to send out mailers of important registration dates, you know, when your dog's supposed to be registered and things like that. You know, working with reaching out to people or businesses that have a large amount of employees, organizations that have a lot of people living there, such as, you know, Scott Farrar, Rivermead. And I think that, yeah, I think public outreach is super important to get people civically engaged. A lot of people who I talk to, a lot of times don't know when a town event is or when this is happening, and figuring out through personal networks and things like that of, you know, where are the underserved communities and how can we access them? And, you know, I'm involved with a lot of stuff in town, and I feel like that is something I could really like take on.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gomez. We did get some individual questions for the town clerk candidates as well, and I'm going to ask those individually now. And I'll start, let's see, we're starting with Mr. Bowl on this one. And you're probably expecting this question. It is, the town clerk position is a 3-year term. Once elected, the town clerk should be able to hit the ground running. Currently, there's no certified deputy clerk in the office. So with no experience as a town clerk, how do you plan to complete training and serve the residents of the town quickly? Mr. Bowl?
After talking to Jeannie at the Department of Motor Vehicles, Deb and Debbie at the Secretary of State, and to Ms. Sherry Farrell, who is the president of the New Hampshire City and Town Clerks Association. She's also the town clerk of Londonderry. Number one, there is plenty of help and assistance out there from other local town clerks' offices. In many cases, they have had roaming town clerks that can come in and assist, as well as the training. According to Jeannie at the DMV, it's a 2-day WebEx class. It would be in June due to a date of our election. We would, if a new town clerk was elected, thanks to the date of our election, we would not be able to attend a May training. But it is a 2-day WebEx class, and you'd be a municipal agent the next day and be able to do that. But in the meantime, our constituents can go to Jaffrey. I can arrange for Jaffrey to help us. I can arrange for other local town clerks to help us to assist in making a seamless transition as possible, unless Ms. Linda Guyette would care to stay on for a while during that training.
All right, you put a notion out there. Thank you. Mr. Gomez, same question for you. As having no experience, how do you plan to complete your training and serve the residents of the town as quickly as possible?
Definitely, you know, and as Brennan just mentioned, the online trainings, you know, it's that time period, and you can't actually take those classes until you're elected, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, so the training period is not too extensive, and you know, I've worked with point of sale systems, inventory systems, you know, client management systems. Worked in when I worked in the restaurant industry, worked in stores that had, you know, $1.4 million of revenue, which is very similar to the amount that goes through the town clerk's office. So I'm, you know, that amount of money doesn't intimidate me. Learning a point of sale system, you know, some procedures and protocols. I think that yeah, I'm not worried about my capability to do that. Really, what I would, you know, be bringing to this is the customer service factor and interacting with people. I think that is a big majority of the job. Not only just doing the job, but doing it in a very positive manner. And yeah, so I think that's.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gomez. And Ms. Guyette, a different question for you. You currently hold the town clerk's position, which gives you that advantage of experience. But in what other ways are you the best person for this position?
I know my job. I know every aspect of it. And I know my residents. I try to do my best to get them in and out of my office as easily and as quickly as possible without a lot of hassle. But there are things that are required. I have no real way to like decide that I don't have to get something from someone just because it's a hardship for them. They do need to be able to provide different things, and it is required depending on what we're doing, whether it be vital records, whether it be a marriage license, and then for registrations and titling of vehicles.
You have a lot of jobs. We understand that. The town clerk's job has built over the years, and I'm well aware of that. Thank you. I feel it's fair that we address one more issue because I got several questions on this for Mr. Brendan Bowl. And I think many townspeople know that your wife, as a former deputy town clerk, has sued the town over working conditions in the office. And I'm not asking you to comment on what is an open case. But do you see potential conflict of interest problems if you are elected as town clerk, Mr. Ball?
Thank you. I see no potential conflict of interest problems with that. Number one, although a deputy can be selected by a town clerk, they are hired by the select board. They are a town employee. The town clerk is a town official that is not an employee of a town. And so it is a total separate position. And although it is separate from the town, I would like to create and foster a lot better teamwork between the town clerk and the town administration that does not currently exist.
All right, perhaps we can briefly pick up that same question with Ms. Guyette. Do you see some ways that you could improve your relationship with the town administration?
I never had an issue with town administration until last year. And I'm not really sure what happened. I got COVID, and when I came back, the wheels on the bus basically fell off. I'm not really, I can't really comment a lot about anything else that went on last year, but I had good working relationships with anyone here. There were no issues.
All right, thank you, Ms. Guyette. I want to give you that opportunity. And just in fairness of time here, Mr. Gomez, do you see some ways that the town clerk's office can better interact with other agencies in town, or even with the state for that matter?
Sure. I mean, yeah, there's town clerks associations, ongoing trainings, management trainings. I am a big, I love self-help type stuff, and I'm always looking at negotiating and leadership skills videos. And so, yeah, so I'm always like honing those skills. And, I've managed employees before, I've managed clients, and, I love helping people solve problems and have the information that they need to do jobs efficiently. And I love open communication. So definitely I would love to be in a lot of communication with the town administrators. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to let each of the candidates have 1 minute as a closing statement to address anything that we didn't bring up in the questioning. And if you wish to give any contact information for voters to contact you, this is your opportunity. We'll go in reverse order from the opening. So Ms. Guyette, you're up first.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to participate in this tonight. Prior to becoming your town clerk, I had 4 years of experience and had grown to love this work. I didn't know how much I would. And that is why I ran for election initially and have continued to be reelected. This is not just a job for me. You and serving you well are my #1 priorities. Since we have no certified deputy town clerk at this time, however, there will be a lengthy interruption of many services if an inexperienced, uncertified person is elected. The town will temporarily lose its New Hampshire municipal agent status. And one important issue is that in the beginning, you will not be able to fully complete your car registrations in Peterborough until a new person is trained and certified. This would be weeks or longer, and you would have to go out of town. I am concerned since I have served so many of you for so many years. I am the only one on the ballot who can provide you with a full, continuous service for every need on day 1. And for all of these reasons, I respectfully request your vote. And thank you for tonight.
Thank you for your thoughtful answers, Ms. Guyette. Mr. Gomez, what would you like to tell us in 1 minute, please?
So yeah, thanks to all the organizers that put this on, and I'm super thankful that I ended up in Peterborough. I was born and raised in San Antonio, moved cross country to Boston. There was an apartment fire there. Moved to Peterborough on a whim for a video production internship, and this town has just been so welcoming and so inviting and supportive. I met my partner here, started my business. I can't wait to buy a house and start a family here. I love this town. I'm invested in it. I'm here to stay. And so I hope you would consider me as a town clerk to serve this town and help solve problems. Thanks so much. Oh, and you can, if you have any more questions or want to learn more, you can contact me on Facebook at Gomez for Town Clerk.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gomez. Thank you for those answers. It's nice to see some young people running for office in a town. Mr. Bowl, your closing statement, please.
Thank you so much, Liz, Kate, the League of Women Voters, and everybody for turning out and listening. Due to my 30 years experience in healthcare, both an optician as well as a HIPAA privacy and security officer, a HIPAA consultant to doctors across the country, one of the things I've had to be really keep on top of is changes in laws affecting privacy, rights to know regarding medical records, and keeping track of changes of 50 states is pretty difficult. But it's something I love to do. I love to take care of people. That's why I started a business here. 4 years into being here making eyeglasses, since I donate 1 pair for every 5 sold, I've been able to donate 37 pairs of glasses to residents here in Peterborough and the surrounding areas. I thank you all for being able to help me do that. I am looking forward to voting day. I hope to be able to get your vote. Thank you so much. You can reach me through Facebook, either at my office, Visions LLC, at Brendan Bowl for Town Clerk, phone number 603-213-3896. You can even text message that. I look forward to hopefully being able to serve you in a much better capacity and a larger capacity than I already do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowl, for those interesting words. All of the candidates, I want to thank you for your candid answers, your thoughtfulness in answering this. I think you've given all the voters a lot to think about before May 11th. Remind you that the polls are open from 7 to 7, and if you are in need of an absentee ballot, you can get that application from the current town clerk's office. And it's also available online, or you can download it online, I believe. So at this point, Kate, do you have other closing comments? We want to remind people this was recorded, and if your friends weren't able to get in because we thought we had enough spaces, but we didn't, it will be on the League of Women Voters New Hampshire website, LWVNH.org. You'll find our candidate forum page. It will be posted there, so tell your friends. Kate, do you have some closing words for us?
Yes, and it did turn out that some of the people who were first closed out were able to sneak in. I think a few people left, so the number stayed at about 100. We will perhaps look into having a webinar the next time. So that's important to know that the next candidate forum number 2 is next Tuesday. That'll be a different link than this one. We will look into how to expand the viewership, perhaps by becoming a webinar. Ben, you also will be you'll be posting the YouTube, I believe, as well. So what else does the paper want to add to comments about this so far?
Oh yeah, well yeah, we'll start spreading the video links around as soon as we get them uploaded, and we probably have a couple more stories coming up before the election. The deadline for letters, I think, is Saturday. So if anyone wants to write a letter in support of their candidate, send it to news@ledgertranscript.com, 300 words by Saturday. We'll get that in before the election. And yeah, we'll have the next candidate forum on Tuesday. So we better be able to expand it, because I think there's about 100 people running just in those races.
Yeah, and I also want to thank the candidates so very much for choosing to run, putting yourselves out there, being thoughtful, being that engaged, and that I don't know, loving of Peterborough that you want to do this. Do any of the candidates want to say anything? Unmute yourselves. We actually ended up with a 15-minute thing of time. Does anybody want to say anything more?
Vote for me. Love y'all.
Okay, well, we have to thank Liz once again for coming from out of town and working her magic with complicated, thorny questions and turning them into something that leads to good voter information from thoughtful candidates. So with that in mind, good night for tonight. See you next week.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Have a great evening.